I never thought moving to Maplewood Shores would turn into a battle for survival. At 34, fresh out of a messy breakup and tired of city noise, I wanted somewhere quiet to reset my life. When I saw the small lakeside cottage with its wraparound porch and private dock, I knew I had found it. The house was a bit weathered, but the charm of the property won me over instantly. I poured most of my savings into it, and just a week after settling in, I bought a sleek black jet ski, my one indulgence, and parked it proudly at my dock. That jet ski became my freedom, my therapy, and the thing that reminded me why I had left everything behind. The first month was bliss. I worked remotely as a graphic designer, spending my evenings skimming across the glassy lake or just sitting by the water with a beer. My neighbors waved politely, but mostly kept to themselves, and I thought I had finally found peace. That illusion shattered one afternoon when I met Barbara Nash. She was the HOA president, a tall woman in her early 60s with icy eyes and a voice like a school principal's. She marched up my driveway, clipboard in hand, and greeted me not with a smile, but with a warning. My dock light was the wrong wattage. Community guidelines are clear, she said, tapping her papers. Dock lights must not exceed 40 watts. Yours is 60. You'll receive a notice. She didn't wait for a response before pivoting on her heels and walking off, leaving me dumbfounded on my porch. From then on, the notices arrived with clockwork precision. My lawn was 2 inches too tall. My recycling bin was visible from the street. The curtains in my living room didn't meet approved color standards. It was harassment disguised as regulation. I tried to play along, trimming, repainting, adjusting, hoping she'd leave me alone. But compliance only seemed to feed her appetite for control. She wasn't interested in order. She wanted submission. The first real confrontation happened at the monthly HOA meeting in the community hall. I went mostly out of curiosity, thinking maybe I could meet some neighbors, maybe understand why everyone tiptoed around Barbara. The room was half full, mostly older residents staring down at their papers like school kids, avoiding eye contact. Barbara presided at the front with her loyal clique, and before long, she introduced a proposal. No motorized watercraft longer than 8 feet could be kept at private docks. My jet ski was 9. I stood, heart hammering, and objected. The property deed includes dock rights. That was part of why I bought my home. You can't just change that with a vote. My voice shook, but I pushed forward. A few residents murmured in agreement, and that gave me courage. I pointed out the community marina was too small to store everyone's watercraft, and this rule would rob us of what we'd paid for. To my relief, a retired firefighter named George, who lived 2 doors down, stood and backed me up. "This is another power grab," he said bluntly. "We pay enough in fees already without losing property rights." The vote was close, but the proposal failed. For a moment I felt victorious, until I caught Barbara whispering to her secretary, her sharp eyes flicking toward me with unmistakable malice. The next morning, my dock was empty. My jet ski, my prized possession, was gone. At first, I thought maybe it had come loose, but the knots were still tight, just cut clean through. My gut told me exactly who was responsible. I called the police, and an officer came to take my report. But before she finished, Barbara herself arrived, smug and composed, carrying a folder. "There's no crime here," she announced. The HOA impounded it for violations. She showed the officer paperwork for a newly passed regulation banning watercraft over 8 feet. An emergency rule, she claimed, had been approved the night before. The officer looked uncomfortable, said it seemed like a civil matter, and left me standing there furious and helpless as Barbara smiled. I drove to the community marina, and there it was, my jet ski, parked like it belonged to her, while she showed it off to other board members. The humiliation burned, but worse was the realization she'd stolen it in plain sight and nothing stopped her. That night, as if fate intervened, a letter addressed to Barbara was misdelivered into my mailbox. The envelope bore the IRS logo. Against every instinct, I opened it. It was a notice of audit, questioning over $150,000 in unexplained deposits. My pulse quickened. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't untouchable. I confided in George, and he introduced me to his friend Clara, an accountant with a sharp mind and zero patience for corruption. Together, we started digging. Clara traced HOA financials, which were supposed to be public, and found large payments to vague shell companies, Maplewood Maintenance LLC, Lakeside Services, entities that didn't exist outside of P.O. boxes. The money left the HOA account and seemed to vanish, only to resurface in Barbara's lifestyle. A new Cadillac, designer jewelry, luxury vacations. It became clear my jet ski wasn't her first theft. Talking with former residents confirmed a pattern. Classic cars, boats, even an art collection, all confiscated under dubious rules, then quietly sold. People got tired, sold their homes below value, and left. Every thread we pulled led back to Barbara. The breakthrough came when Clara discovered a listing on a niche broker site for a jet ski that matched mine exactly, except the registration number had been altered. It was being sold to a buyer in Miami. That buyer, we learned, was linked to a man named Castillo, a known fence for smuggled goods. Barbara wasn't just embezzling HOA funds, she was moving stolen property through an international smuggling ring. We needed proof. That's when I called in a favor from my college friend Evan, who lived in Miami and worked in private security. Evan agreed to pose as a buyer, offering cash for my jet ski. Wearing a hidden recorder, he met Barbara at the marina. She bragged openly, telling him she had confiscated dozens of violating assets, that her legal knowledge made her untouchable, and, most damningly, that she had a partner named Castillo, who moved everything out of the country, no questions asked. The FBI became involved quickly once Evan shared the tape. Agent Morales, who specialized in financial crimes, told me they'd been after Castillo for years, but never had leverage. Barbara had just handed it to them. The only problem, she was already accelerating the sale. My jet ski and a special painting, as she called it, were scheduled to leave that weekend. The FBI needed more time, but I didn't have it. So I set my own plan in motion. I had secretly installed a GPS tracker on the jet ski, disguised within the ignition system. That night, George and I followed the signal to a secluded dock at the far end of the lake. Through binoculars, we saw Barbara, her cronies, and a heavy-set man who matched Castillo's description. Barbara carried a wrapped canvas under her arm while directing her men to load my jet ski onto a trailer. My hands shook as I opened my laptop. As a designer, I wasn't a hacker, but I had rigged the jet ski with remote controls through a smart module I'd installed myself. Originally so I could warm up the engine from my phone. Now, with a few clicks, I cut the fuel system and activated the alarm. The jet ski erupted in a piercing siren, its lights flashing wildly. Chaos followed. Barbara shrieked at her men who scrambled helplessly. Castillo, paranoid, thought it was a police sting. He bolted for his SUV. That was the exact moment FBI vans screeched in, agents swarming the dock. Barbara tried to flee, but the agents cornered her. Castillo was tackled before he could start his engine. The painting, wrapped in cloth, turned out to be a Renaissance piece stolen years ago from a European museum. Along with that, they recovered piles of falsified HOA documents and nearly $40,000 cash. My jet ski sat there wailing like a victory anthem until I finally silenced it with my phone. The aftermath was swift. Barbara was arrested and later sentenced on charges ranging from fraud and embezzlement to trafficking stolen goods. Castillo was extradited to face international charges. The HOA board dissolved, replaced with a transparent committee led by George. Residents who had been silent for years finally spoke up, and for the first time, Maplewood Shores felt like a community rather than a dictatorship. I got my jet ski back, though it took weeks before riding it didn't remind me of the ordeal. Eventually, I found joy again on the water. Sometimes Clara joined me, sometimes George, sometimes new neighbors who moved in after Barbara's empire crumbled. The peace I'd wanted in moving here finally returned, but it carried the weight of everything I had learned. Silence enables bullies, and even the most iron-fisted HOA tyrant can fall when people stand together. One warm Sunday afternoon, as I skimmed across the lake, spray in my face, sun on my shoulders, I thought back to Barbara's smug smile, the day she told me my jet ski was community property. That smile had been wiped away in handcuffs, and I couldn't help but grin. Justice had finally caught up with her.